Yeah, that feels alright. It's pretty feeble. It's kind of working. It seems to be generally cooling the place down. The only setting that works is low, but that's fine. That's what I usually keep it on. But here we have Squirrel. And her mother, Prisma. Hello, Prisma. Alright, nonfiction. Alright. Alright, some more nonfiction. What is this channel? Why am I doing this? It's a celebration of literature. Just got this one from a free pile. The Face of Battle, a definitive model. In this book, which is so creative, so original, one learns as much about the nature of man as a battle. J.H. Plum, New York Times Book Review. Totally original and brilliant book. Huh. But that's from the same article, I could tell. Let's say I wasn't thrilled about this one, but I was intrigued. It's a nice paperback. I think this was a recent Freebox one as well. The Press, the Civil Rights Struggle, and the Awakening of a Nation. Winner of the Pulitzer. I know a guy, kind of a friend here in town, who won the Pulitzer Prize for music recently. Raven Chacon. Incredible. It's cool to know people that are successful. I do believe a rising tide lifts all boats, and it doesn't hurt anybody to be rubbing shoulders with people that are, high-achieving visionaries. Like Brian Eno's idea of scenius, that you get a bunch of creative people in a place, and you're all greater than the sum of your parts. Kind of inspiring each other with your processes. Just when you think there's nothing left to say about the civil rights movement, the race beat pulls you back in. Well, who wrote that? Los Angeles Times. Yeah, I thought the civil rights movement was real boring, and then I read this book. Okay, dude, you might want to revise your editorial. Hated it. Hated talking about it. Didn't know why. Okay, this is a you thing. Has good yarns, according to Newsweek. It's like this important book about civil rights issues. Newsweek is all good yarns. Well, how journalism affected the civil rights movement. Well, yeah, this book sounds way interesting. Scratching Post. Anyway, looks good to me. I had another copy of this and I couldn't find this the other day. I wanted to give my son the nicer copy, but I couldn't find this. I gave him a stack of books. He asked for some books to change his life. I gave him The Alchemist to kind of inspire him with a fable saying you're the hero of your own life. I gave him A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius from Dave Eggers because it's just a really compelling, funny memoir of a youngish person. And I think it's good for growing people to see their own stories in that way, like, yeah, there's something worthwhile there. And then I gave him Into the Wild because I was like, this is the book that changed my life when I was exactly your age, 17, almost 18. I read this book and it gave me an alternate script for life. And I was like, maybe instead of going on a Mormon mission, I'll go hitchhike and live in the woods. And so I did. Yeah, it seriously changed my life, big time. And when we did our charity hike across the country in 2001, we did it for Oxfam, the charity that McCandless gave all his money to. I mean, it just coincidentally happened to be based out of Boston, the town we founded it in. That was crazy. Oxfam America. But this is an interesting edition. This is like a newish one. I'm unfamiliar with a copy of Into the Wild that looks like this. But this is probably good to have because John Krakauer has rewritten certain elements of this book, particularly about the details surrounding Chris McCandless's death. He literally went back to college, got a degree in like biochemistry, just so he could analyze the seeds that killed Chris McCandless and see if he stupidly ate the wrong thing or if it was seemingly fine. And I think he made a mistake that he had no prior warning of. An obscure thing happened to these seeds that they built up some toxic chemical over time, and in one season they're unsafe and poisonous, and in another they're just fine. He had a guidebook that I've looked at a copy of, Tanaina Plant Lore, but that was it's like a pretty simple guidebook. And like the Paiute people of Utah, he found that this, these abundant seeds for the people of Utah, the Paiutes. It was these grass seeds. And I bet this is something that native people ate at the right time too, or it wouldn't have been in Taino plant lore. You got to have those staples, you know? Your rice, your beans, your wild grass seeds, whatever. With the new afterword. Oh yeah, I'm glad I have this. I'll always pick up every copy of Little Into the Wild. This is a nonfiction book that changed my life. The way I hear On the Road affecting some teenagers in the 50s and 60s is how I felt by Into the Wild. Because I had read On the Road too, and On the Road did inspire me, but this was the one that really kind of blew my whole worldview open. Just Chris McCandless is such a great example of someone just writing their own script, doing their own thing. I'll always defend him, though of course I don't think he was a perfect figure. Heck, his sister's book points out that he was the president of a young college Republican club. I mean, what? I was like, I bet he would have grown out of that. Because he also did like huge research projects on starvation in Africa and things like that. That doesn't point to business as usual, you know, is great when you start getting into those topics. But he came out of a real like trust fund, you know, wealthy kind of family, I think. His dad was a bigamist and Chris's family was his dad's second family. So this book, kind of bums me out a little bit because I bought this book because I met this guy, Adi Shmuley. He lives in Los Lunas, New Mexico, and he wrote this book in like the 70s. But I had a job delivering and picking up rugs, and we went to his place, and he had a really good modern art collection of big canvases, and we picked up all his rugs to be taken back to the warehouse and cleaned. That was such an interesting job for like getting me into the houses of the rich. It was crazy. Maybe not even the rich, but just people well off enough to have rugs, you know? Because rugs are really expensive to clean and maintain if they're not just like machine washed or, you know, some Costco thing you take outside and hit with a broomstick. That's so cute, squirrel. Thank you for helping the channel by being adorable. You're very cute too, Prisma. I'll look at you in a minute. Hi, kitty. Anyway, the day I brought this book to work because I had just ordered it from like eBay or something. No, from is it Abe Books? All the best used book sites get bought up by giant conglomerates, but I'm sure I got this one from Abe. No, or Thrift Books. I got this from Thrift Books. They're still safe, I think. Anyway, pretty sure it was because I talked to someone who outranked me at that job about us unionizing. And I think he went right to the higher up in the company. But the day I showed up with that book, it was just an instant, you're fired. And they, you know, plucked some excuses out of the air. But there were only 26 employees, and we could have easily unionized. And the owners would always say stuff like, oh, it doesn't matter if you give the 50% off coupons because our overhead is our markup is so high that we'll make a great profit no matter what. And we would all grumble over our lunch breaks like, then why do we get paid so crappy that we all have to work second jobs? Anyway, I should have talked to 20 other employees at my level first before I talked to the guy I talked to who I thought was like my driving around in a truck buddy. A lot of those work relationships, I guess, are phony. I try to be genuine with everyone I talk with in those environments, even though you can't like be your whole self, you know? You don't want to break out every anecdote or even... Plus, the work environment I'm in is a school, so you got to be doubly, you know, on guard for the students. Anyway, so I got canned at that job. Called a lawyer up afterward, and they were interested in taking the case, but I still knew people that worked there, and I knew they wouldn't appreciate being drawn into the mess I was about to stir up. So I didn't proceed with the legal stuff out of concern for them, though it would have benefited them in the long run. Maybe gotten my job back. That would be hilarious, to get a job back against someone's will. Like the show Hacks, which I enjoy. This is one of 2 or 3 books I have about Herodotus. Travels with Herodotus. This is like a modern day retracing of his routes. Cool. Here's another Herodotus book. Herodotus, the father of history. As far as we know, the first guy to really write it down. And he was widely traveled, so he had a lot to say. Plus, he was kind of the first folklorist. He collected lore everywhere he went. Been into him ever since seeing The English Patient 30 years ago. The Rise of America's Surveillance State. The Watchers by Shane Ayers. Wow, interesting cover. Technology and Terrorism. Oh man. So this is about how the surveillance state came to be. Whoa. A long time ago I had an idea for a movie I wanted to write. It was a movie, yeah. Set a little in the future when like reality television has taken over everything, or like streaming, self-streaming. Everyone's life is public pretty much 24/7, and one person doesn't want to be, and so he becomes like the ultimate celebrity that everybody's fascinated by because he's always trying to elude being documented. I think that was vaguely the idea. Now that doesn't feel very fresh or original to me. I mean, it could work, but for one thing, more than one person would not want to be documented. I guess there could be some point in the future where only one person is left. I suppose it's possible. Yikes. Used to have a politics section. Now this is just kind of blended in with nonfiction. Used to have a philosophy section. Now this is also just blended in with nonfiction. An inquiry concerning human understanding. David Hume. Open Court, established 1887. Hume's autobiography and a biographical note by Adam Smith. Huh. Adam Smith likes him? That's interesting. Adam Smith being Mr. Free Market. The invisible hand of the market. I don't know much about Hume. Didn't he attempt to prove things by pure logic chains? I do know this is a beautiful old paperback. Pretty good. 95 cents. An inquiry concerning human understanding and a treatise on human nature. 1960 paperback. But Kierkegaard and Consciousness, this might be an interesting book. Looks a little academic for my usual reading habits, but maybe I haven't had my aha moment with philosophical text yet where I'm just like, I love reading this kind of thing. I mean, I've certainly had that with lines here and there and ideas. Good old Nietzsche. Anyway, this book's author, I think, lives in Los Lunas, New Mexico, and that's cool. Maybe it's really good. Let's open a page and find our fortune. I shall here permit myself to tell a story, which without any sort of adaptation on my part comes direct from an asylum. So I need to finish my book. That's what I'm taking away for me personally from that. But you too should probably find some way to express your inner insanity. Essays Cultural and Agricultural. A Continuous Harmony by Wendell Berry. Author of The Unsettling of America. Pretty good cover. That's interesting. That cover hit me as very 80s, but it's early 70s. 72, 70. That's wild. Placidus or Taos Hippie could have been reading this exact copy in 1973 in one of those communes. Probably not this exact copy. Well, it's possible. I spent time last summer at New Buffalo, the commune in Taos that inspired Easy Rider. Spent a night camping outside, got to know everybody there. Met this amazing artist making just insane, brilliant abstract work with precise lines and shapes and no masking tape or anything like that. And Joe, what's his full name? Just incredible stuff. And there were just hundreds of canvases in his space covered in plastic, like he just made them, put them away. I'm like, you need to do 1 million gallery shows. This video, let this serve as a good reminder to me that I told him I'd write an article about him. Go back there and do that sometime this summer. But their library was great. I have a bunch of pictures of the New Buffalo library. I wouldn't be surprised if this copy was in there. Yeah, Wendell Berry. I've heard poems and little essays from him before. Don't know him well, but I think he's maybe an important sort of land writer from this era. Wendell Berry is a poet, teacher, and farmer. All right. Dignified and lucid statement of the need for personal attention, love for the land. Boston Phoenix. Oh, I remember reading the Boston Phoenix. I'll read this sometime. Maybe. What's this one here? The Culture of Classicism, Ancient Greece and Rome in American Intellectual Life, 1780 to 1910. Yeah, that's interesting. By Caroline Winterer. Boy, does this was originally a dissertation written all over it, huh? So dissertations are like an incredible effort of focus, you know. It's kind of a beautiful library copy, except for that discard sticker. I think this came from Manzano High School's cart in the library of things they were getting rid of. But I want to read it. Crisp, clean pages. Good job. Good job, Johns Hopkins University Press. Good job. Albuquerque's motto was once, "Good for you, Albuquerque. Albuquerque, good for you." There were ads on TV and the radio all the time. Good for you, Albuquerque. Albuquerque, good for you. Here's old Stroke-a-Day Joe who has a stroke every day and picks out towns' nicknames and mascots and mottos and whatnot. Anyway, good for you, the Johns Hopkins University Press. The Johns Hopkins University Press, good for you. In Albuquerque's defense, I haven't heard that in years. It's been dropped and buried. I'd still wear a t-shirt of it. Somebody was like, Albuquerque just really needs encouragement. Which is probably true. Maybe now I like it. Mystery religions, more like the mystery book. Look at this beautiful objet d'art. Dover. Dover keeps it simple, but they knock it out of the park every time. They're all, what if we use the original font from the original book and, like, I don't know, some art from it? Make a really good binding. Dover, you mad genius. Yeah, when I was a kid, living overseas briefly because my parents were religious weirdos of a sort, the Dover catalog was like my Bible. Also the Bible, because I had to read all that stuff. But a study in the religious background of early Christianity. Oh, so cool. So this is like the Gnostics and all the... That's such an interesting time of belief. It's like the first episodes of American Idol where they haven't weeded out the really unusual outliers yet. That's a move. Your epigrams are all in another language. You know Greek and Latin, right? Like everyone else. For over 1,000 years, the ancient Mediterranean world was familiar with the type of religion known as mystery religions, which changed the religious outlook of the Western world, and which are operative in European civilization and in the Christian church to this day. Sports history. Look at that. Sports history. Subscribe now and save now off the news. Subscribe now and save off the newsstand rate. Anyone want to buy this for their sports fanatic parent? Frame it. Dover edition designed for years of use. Yeah, Dover's good like that. Yeah, this looks cool. The early Christianity class I took had some texts about that sort of thing. I found it very fascinating. The mystery religions. That could be a good band name. Keep the Indian philosophy. The philosophy teacher I had, this young guy, Ethan Mills, pretty much convinced me, with research, of the Indian roots of much of Greek philosophy. And I believe it. This looks incredible. I have to read this book sometime. And also, this is a beautiful book. I don't know. Is the camera doing this thing justice? Look at that. That's like finding an old cornflower blue plate in pieces in a rusted trash pile. 100 years later in the West, somewhere in the desert. Source book in Indian philosophy. Oh, this would definitely expand your mind to read those. Oh, I gotta read those. Princeton paperbacks. This looks like some Baudrillard type stuff. Of course, much before. Now, when one is sound asleep, composed, serene, and knows no dream, that is the self, said he. That is the immortal. The fearless. That is Brahman. This book looks beautiful. I had this bookmark inside it. This could be very old. It's just a piece of paper from another time. There's pieces throughout. Dated 1954. The leading Indian philosopher, statesman, and an American scholar bring together enough of the philosophical wisdom of ancient and modern India to enable a student of Indian philosophy who is not a Sanskrit scholar to become truly acquainted with India's great and lasting contribution to world thought. Yeah. Imagine if you read a book like this like multiple times over a few years. You'd probably be a different person. It would definitely expand your thinking. There's a very good chance I will read that book. Very glad I own it. Source book in Indian philosophy, edited by Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan and Charles A. Moore. I've talked about this in another video, but it's really fascinating. The Mormon Church hired this guy, Thomas Stewart Ferguson. I wonder if he was related to Erna Ferguson of Albuquerque. The library named after her here. Local writer and granddaughter of a founder of New Albuquerque. Thomas Stewart Ferguson's Archaeological Search for the Book of Mormon. This is a very interesting book. This is the kind of book that Mormons with fragile testimony should read. And really all Mormons should read this because it's pretty damning. So like, this guy is hired to research the Book of Mormon. Is it true? Are Joseph Smith's claims of golden plates true? He's in the church. The church wants to verify it so they can brag about it and say, like, there's a scientific basis for all this, historical, etc. But he finds beyond a shadow of a doubt, like, oh no, this thing was totally made up by this kid in New York, and none of this stuff matches. And these claims were made at all these different locations and kept moving south, farther and farther away. Actually, it was over there. I mean, at first they said it was the Ohio Mound Builders. Oh yeah, the Book of Mormon, that was the Lamanites, the Ohio Mound Builders, just right there. And then Brigham Young was the prophet and president, leader of the Mormons. And, they're out west, so he's like, the Native Americans of today, they are the descendants of the characters in the Book of Mormon. And then when genetics disproved that, much of that genetic research done by BYU at the Mormon school, they moved it down to Central America, to Mexico and Central America, and it's been moving farther south ever since. Pretty funny. But Jesus is always like this Mediterranean. No, he's from the Mediterranean, but he's like blue-haired, Caucasian-looking dude. Yeah, in the Book of Mormon, Jesus goes and visits America. That's a great idea for a sequel, but so fights his way through the underworld, which the Gnostics did. Jason goes to Manhattan. Jesus goes to America. Anyway, the most damning thing of all, and Ferguson's findings are pretty damning. He has all these access to the archives, and yikes. But the most damning thing is what happened afterward, and that is that the Mormon Church took the research, quietly swept it under the rug, and tried to hide it forever. It didn't come out, in the form that it is in this book until much later. They would later do the same thing when the Mormon bomber, this very famous, violent Unabomber type figure in Utah, who was also an expert forger, would forge an alternate origin story for Mormonism involving Joseph Smith seeing a white salamander, and he sold all these letters about it. The Mormon Church, who were like, this completely contradicts everything and shows that Joseph Smith was just trying all sorts of different things. But it looks real, so they just bought it up. They gave him tons of money and bought it up and buried it, archived it. Oh yeah, this book's crazy. I've got another one on him too. Salamander, the story of the Mormon forgery murders. If you like Under the Banner of Heaven and you want another Mormon-themed crime drama, check out Salamander. Ooh, that looks cool. Looking Far West, the search for the American West in history, myth, and literature. Wow. Torrey still had a second book about this. Guess not. I must have gotten rid of that one. Oh well. Doesn't seem like me. But neither does the whole Purge of the Book collection from 11,000 to 3,000. It's wildly out of character. Anyway, this was given to me by a truly unique friend, my friend Michaela Dizovi, who founds roller derby leagues wherever she goes, and has traveled widely around the world, written a cookbook about eating bugs to save the planet, full of recipes. So it might be the only insect cookbook. Michaela, I wish you'd given this to me a long time ago. She knew me way back when I was still in that stuff. Michaela's kind of famous in the roller derby world. She's dominatrix. In a bunch of roller derby books. Those are fun games to watch. They're crazy, violent. People really do get hurt. Speaking of violence, the Vikings. Everyone's all proud of their Viking ancestry or whatever, but it's like, no, I think, Vikings are a cool part of culture. I guess this is more like the helmets they would have worn. Not the operatic horned ones. You don't see those as much in depictions anymore, though. Well, How to Train Your Dragon, you do. I love a nice, compact, solid little large-sized paperback. Pretty cool. I love when someone turns up in a bog. Hey, here's someone from a long time ago. They were in a bog. Here's their hair. It's your great-grandfather. The background to a fierce and fascinating civilization. It's crazy. The genetics of Iceland and Greenland were tested. They found Native American DNA in a small percentage of the population. That's crazy. People must have been traveling back and forth. I mean, there were Viking towns all over Newfoundland. The fiercest Viking of all was Anne of Green Gables. I'm maybe mixing some books up here. No, but she did live in that same area. I mean, later, her character. That's kind of a weird brain exercise. Yeah, later, fictionally, she lived there. Yeah, some of my ancestors were Vikings who lived in Normandy, France, pre-year 1000. And I know this because, it was from Normandy that the hordes came to invade England in 1066 and defeated that country at the Battle of Hastings and brought new language and everything, not to mention the class system of, we're taking everything that's yours and enforcing that through torture chambers and dungeons. Censuses before and after, you can look at them and they're crazy. Everyone should read 1066, The Year of the Conquest. Fascinating book. A Rosetta Stone for so much of modern history. Anyway, one of my ancestors was with the Normans, came in there, ensuring that his ancestor, 1,000 years later, would have a K sound in his name, Michael, instead of Mish, because he brought the Norman sounds with him. But Normandy was this part of France that means beloved of the Norse, that was given to the Vikings because France was like, knock it off, quit invading us all the time, you jerks. Let's give you this land, leave us alone. But apparently that didn't sate their bloodlust, because then they were like, let's go get England. Anyway, one of those ancestors' last name was Clouch, Clough, which means ravine. And he was given land by William the Conqueror after the 1066 Battle of Hastings, awarded it. And that's the first appearance of that name, Clouch, which later became Clough, and is a really well-documented family line that I can follow back all the way to John Clough stepping off of, I think, the ship Elizabeth in the 1630s in Boston, where today there's a YMCA in Charlestown. But I have an idea for like a computer program I'd like to write sometime. I don't know anything about that stuff, but sometimes I'll get an idea for a program or an app or something and be like, I should make this. But imagine this, a history teaching resource that asked you a bunch of questions up front and researched what it could of your family history with you involved, and then incorporated that into the lessons taught, so that as you learned, you saw like how you were connected to these things. Like, I'll tell you, I always thought the Salem witch trials were interesting, but my interest definitely increased when I found out I had like so many relatives, like direct ancestors involved in it. Several of them signed a petition saying Mary Bradbury wasn't a witch. I hope my Salisbury ancestors, the Cloughs, Clough at that time, Cluff after they became Mormon centuries later. I got more interested in subjects when I see my place in them and realize that everything that's ever happened is like a prequel to us, Your saga, my saga. Yeah, some of those early American Cloughs married a family called the Pages. So in my book I write, I'm descended from ravines and pages. I love that. As a writer who loves canyons, that's pretty good to me. Maybe an essay about narrow places in the world would be good. That'd be a good topic for an essay. Like about the canyons and the arroyos, and the narrow passes of the world. When I lived on Lake Powell for almost 7 months and spent so much time in the Red Rock country all around that time, and I have been back, like last year, I went back a lot with my wilderness camp job. I feel very much like a canyon person, I've always loved the canyons. It's so interesting. But what is that? It's not a cave. You're still open. You're still out in the sun. Sometimes caves connect to them. Hello, squirrel. This channel is closing in on 500 viewers. That's crazy. Thanks, people. That's awesome. First I was going to say, what's wrong with you all? No. What's wrong with me? Why do I keep making these things? But honestly, it will. It's weird. I simultaneously want the channel to have viewers, but I want it also to be kind of an anti-YouTube channel because it so much is anyway. I don't want to do the like and subscribe dance. I might not even ever monetize it in a conventional way. I might just sell stuff on occasion, why can't it just be its own weird thing? Like, I don't know. I've definitely seen book collections before where I'm like, I wish I could just explore that book collection. I wish the guy had an online database or the gal could just go read what's all is there, look at it. It's kind of what this biz is. Still some left on the shelf, but and then one more nonfiction shelf. And then we'll have looked at both of those nonfiction cases right there. But not at these southwestern shelves, which we'll have to do soon. And they'll probably be about as popular as my Glen Canyon Lake Powell books. See also when I get to these New Mexico books. These New Mexico books. But not the books Prismo wrote. Everyone will tune in for those because they're great. If any of you ever saw my video, Eternal Meowing of the Spotless Sci-Fi, where I was looking at the sci-fi section, but I had a stray cat in the apartment that wouldn't stop meowing, and I was hoping to get it adopted. I hadn't seen that cat for weeks and weeks. I just saw him today, and she let me pet her a little bit even. And was eating on my porch, because I leave food and water out. So maybe there's hope for little Tuxie still. And watch that video if you haven't seen it. I think it's on, like, if you click on the like most popular one on the channel, it's on that list, and I think it's pretty funny because the cat never quits meowing the whole video long. Or don't live your best life. I don't care if people watch this channel. That's kind of a weird thing, but it's true. My friend and I were talking about it, and he's all, well, let the market decide. Speaking of Adam Smith. It's my water, not your water. I just saw you stick your whole head in there. No. You literally have a fountain. Use your fountain. The water dish in another room. There were these really surreal pill ads that were playing on TV all the time a while ago. And the chorus that they sang and the words came across the screen was, "Nothing is everything." And then people must have complained because they changed it in subsequent versions of the ad, and I never saw that one again. But I have a photo of it. It's pretty weird. Like, how is this advertising something? Like, makes you less itchy or something. Okay, we'll finish that shelf off next time. Today was the first day at the school I work at in the admin area of the students not being there. And even though everyone was trying to get stuff done, there was definitely like a party mode atmosphere going on. But it was very bittersweet because a lot of people were retiring or leaving forever. Some people, I think, are really afraid of like feeling friendship and anything toward anybody. Anytime I ever like went to say something to somebody like, you know what, you're really cool, and telling a principal who's retiring that, you know, and I always feel like kind of cut off. Like, do people really want to hear genuineness and vulnerability? Probably not. I gotta make waves. Society is exhausting for me on some level. I don't know. Like, I like it. I can thrive in social situations, but also it's like so constant. All right, take care, folks.